Hi, I'm Natalia Nicholson, founder of Women in Digital Business, where we empower underrepresented women to thrive in the digital world. So guys, hopefully you're finding it more and more easy to come into the community. We're making things a lot more easier. It literally is just as simple as creating an account, going into the login part of our website. If you don't have a username or password, which obviously all of you do have because you're here, you can literally just sign up for an account. It brings you into our community, and every Tuesday at midday, you just literally need to come in. You'll see a nice button down the left-hand side that says join us now, and you just click on that and you simply come in. So I know for some of you, you're all used to your Zooms or your Telegrams or your Slack, and it's that instant access. But we have created this space, and as we grow, it's just important that we can bring everybody to one space that is a part of our own community, because it just means that we get to offer you an awful lot more. So make sure you stay tuned. Make sure please you have saved our email address, hello@womenindigitalbusiness, in your email boxes, to make sure that you're receiving our emails. As the weeks go on, we're going to be having some challenges in here. There's going to be resources that we give away. And actually, we're going to be doing more masterclasses, not just from me, Natalia Nicholson. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the founder of Women in Digital Business. But you'll also be hearing from some of our other coaches and mentors. So for those of you that are listening to this or watching this on a replay on YouTube, please make sure that you join, look at the link below, click on it, you create an account and come into our community. There's just way too much to miss out on. And we can't do that on anybody else's platform. But on our own, we can give you the world. Right, so today, ladies, we are going to be looking at webinars. And I know there's many people that, especially on the internet and all the noise. I watch a lot of things on social media that talk about webinars, and they talk about email marketing as well, like it's dead, it doesn't really work anymore. There's a new way to find your audience. There's all these new ways. There's always someone selling us something, and those things can tend to be a distraction. There's some things that just always work, like not being funny, ladies. Television became streaming channels like Netflix, Prime, Now TV. Even Sky's more of a streaming channel than it is a terrestrial TV channel. YouTube is also a TV channel. How many of you watch things on YouTube? So the way how we operate on TV is just so different. Okay. Think about it. Podcasts has replaced radios. Newspapers has replaced with Facebook. Magazines are being replaced, and they're now interactive, and it's now Instagram and TikTok. Billboard ads are now display ads over the internet, or direct marketing that used to come from your letterbox. So it's the same principles, it's just a different version digitally. So sometimes be really careful when you're hearing a lot of noise out there on the internet, specifically IG and YouTube, telling you that this doesn't work anymore. Put it in the bin, it's got to be this way. It's just a different way of doing things. That doesn't mean to say you're just dumb. Does that make any sense? What might have worked before, and there's this whole new strategy. That's just a way of people luring you into their funnel. You have to understand your own business, and you have to understand your audience. Everything I always teach and tell you will come down to, well, what does your audience want? And for those of you that are coaches, consultants, content creators, you've either got a membership site or a course, or you're putting one together, or you work with a group of people where your story or a program that you put together changes people's lives, you need to think to yourself, what would be the most impactful way for you to be able to speak to them for half an hour and 45 minutes, and what is it that they need to know? Does that make sense? And for that reason, that's why webinars are so important. And it isn't just webinars. Next week, we're going to be looking at ebooks as well. And again, quite often you'll hear, ebooks, dump an ebook. That was old. We did that 5 to 7 years ago. It's just all this noise. Do we not still read? Yet the format of how we read might have changed. Maybe some of you might think about getting an audio book done, to go with your ebook. There's things that we've always done from the beginning of time. Digitalization is actually just a different way of doing the same thing. It doesn't mean you just dump something and put it into the bin. So I really want to get that point across. And webinars to this day, if you go and look at the facts and figures, webinars will still always convert. If those of you that really understand what a funnel is, when you look at coaches and consultants and service-led businesses specifically, to this day, actually, webinars still work. Webinar funnels are still the best type of conversion that you will get. Just to let you know, when we do a live event, we will always convert higher. Even with my clients, we will always convert higher on a live event than we would if I did a virtual or online event. Okay, but then there's nuances with that, isn't there? If you do a live event, it's now in a particular area, your audience shrinks. So it's relative to what your strategy and your plan is. But essentially, webinars still work. Whether you want to change the messaging and whether you want to call it a webinar, a masterclass, a taster session, that's different. That's like using content to connect with people, and that's all about messaging and understanding what words and what messages your audience use. But in terms of the traditional webinar of where you're going to give a piece of information away, does that make any sense? And explain to someone exactly what you do. There's no other better way, if you want me to be honest with you, to attract your audience. Okay, here at Women in Digital Business, me, the founder, my speciality area is actually building funnels. Okay, a lot of people don't understand what a funnel is. So I will have to have a masterclass, a webinar, a book, a PDF downloadable to actually explain the power of funnels before someone can actually say, actually, that I understand that now, that's what I need. So again, what can happen sometimes as entrepreneurs is this. Someone says to you, so what do you do? And the answer could be with, oh, I work with women to monetize their personal brand. And I do that by helping them with social media or getting them to understand all the customer touch points like awareness, engagement, subscription, converting. What happens as entrepreneurs, a lot of the gobbledygook comes out. Does that make any sense? And we start explaining things from in our mind. We're thinking, I do this, I do that, I do it for this person, that person, that person. But oh my God, you could be this person. So let me explain that. The person on the receiving end of that is like, you lost them, because what came out is a whole load of gobbledygook. So a really good example is, for instance, let's say you created a dieting product. So within that dieting product, you had a whole load of scientific terms that suppress the appetite, give you endorphins, they make you more energetic. And if you've got more of these, you forget about food, the less you eat. It's also got all the vitamins and calories you need in it. Makes sense? And I could hit you with the glucose, the endorphins, the and start talking about all these different things, how this product works. I lose you, because in your mind, you just want to lose some stones to get onto the beach and, you know, be able to get into a bikini or be able to get into a dress where you're not constantly holding your stomach in, or get rid of the love handles. You know, you've got a reason why you might want to use that diet product. But the person explaining it to you has gone all technical, gone all scientific, and it's gone all into that. Am I making sense here? So what tends to happen as entrepreneurs, the messaging can be incorrect. We often don't really understand what the pain points and challenges are of our audience. Okay, so that's why today, last week, if you didn't catch the replay, make sure you log on to our YouTube channel. One of the team members will put the YouTube channel into the chat right now. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, please. All the replays come in. If you missed last week's, please do watch it, because it was all about storytelling. So it really does plug into what I'm talking about today, which is now webinars. And please don't judge me for the mouse screens that I have open. Let me quickly go into present mode so you can't see it, or you think, Right, so what we're going to really be looking at today is like kind of understanding your unique selling point. And that's something that you're all familiar with. So whether you want to call it your unique selling point, whether you want to call it your value proposition, you know, people buy products after reading or hearing words that make them want to buy the product. Does that make any sense? There's always like an Amazon. What is that every time you're either recording on a webinar or you're doing something, there's always going to be an Amazon delivery just to ring that doorbell to make sure that when you put your content out, you're going to hear the doorbell. Sorry, I had to mention that. So it's really important you understand that. And most of us that have built out a business plan from when you first started your business, that's one of the first things that any business advisor or anywhere that we were hanging out on the internet, or, you know, from our own experiences of doing our degree or doing business courses, we're always told about that unique selling point. What is it that makes you stand out? And to be fair, I went on a conference once and they reframed the messaging for me. And this is what I mean. Framing of messaging is so important. And I remember she said to me, what I do for a living is that I help founders and CEOs understand who they are, so that can translate through their brand. Because when you're first launching your business, or when you're in your early stages, no one doesn't know who you are. Like even yesterday, I was teaching a digital marketing program that I've put together. And there was a coach and consultant on there, and she specialized in copywriting. And it was funny, she kept saying to me, so do you follow this person? Do you follow that person? This is who I want to be like. This is who I'm gearing towards. And all the coaches and influencers that she was showing me, they've been in business for like the last 15 years. So yes, they are on 7 figures, but when you look at a lot of their content or what they're doing, it doesn't really fall into line with today's trends. So those of us that are new that might be following someone like that, actually you're following theories, templates and messaging that might have worked then but don't necessarily work now. But what we're not taking into consideration, this person has started their funnel and started their community like well over a decade ago. So they've got proof of work. Not everybody's got proof of work, and you have to build up proof of work to get to that point. And there's no way around that. So, that's why it's so important to make sure that you've got a webinar or you've got that one masterclass that you can run to your own community. You can go to other people's communities to do, because that's actually what's going to position you in terms of your unique selling point of what is it that makes you fascinating. So this coach, that's the question she asked me, Natalia, what makes you fascinating? And I went to answer it and I thought, what makes me fascinating? And it took me a while to answer it, but it's like having a child. Your brand is born out of you. So you need to think to yourself, and especially if you're a coach or a consultant or a service provider, there would be a why, there would be a reason behind what it is that you do. That reason, that why you've got that gift, that reason of why you do things, that is actually your unique selling point. What makes you fascinating? What makes you stand out? As human beings, we've all got these 5 little fingers. My children would say, it's 2 thumbs, mum. You get the point that I'm making, but we've all got different fingerprints. There is something different about every single one of us. So just saying that, well, we're sustainable, just saying that, we give a good price, just saying, well, we've got much better customer service, it's not good enough. What is it about your story? What is it about you that you can give someone that they're struggling to find? They've got a pain point or a challenge and they don't know where to get it from. What is it about you? Why would you be able to help them? What is it that you've been through? What is it that you've done? Am I making sense? That really hits home. So when we talk about USPs, sometimes the way they're explained to us in a very textbook manner. So because of that, we put them together in a very textbook-like way. We want to come away from that, and you really need to think, what makes me fascinating? What makes me the type of speaker, the type of coach, the type of consultant, the type of authority, the type of leader that I am? What is it about me? Think of some of all the great leaders. If you look at someone, say, for instance, like Oprah. Oprah says she's going to do something, everybody wants to do it. Why? Because she started off as a journalist. She is curious. Even if you watch her styles and techniques, she always listens. She's one of the few, she's got the art of listening down to a T. And then once she listens, she's able to articulate and educate other people on a mass. Okay? You look at people like Malcolm X, great leader, radical. Even last week, if you was watching my things like tonality, your style, Malcolm X was like, fight the problem. Let's do this. Let's go. Okay. There was a style, there was an energy, there was a pace. He stood for something. He stood for that. If you're going to come for me, I'm coming for you back. Okay. Martin Luther King, a word master, left a great imprint on many of us, and really understood the concept and really wanted to get people to do the man in the mirror, like look at yourself. Got people to question who they are, question humanity, be a better person, not do what the other person does, but lead by example. They all stood for something. Make sense? So when we're talking about USPs, we want to come away from this textbook mannerism that we've got. Does that make sense? And really do a deep dive psychologically into, okay, who am I? What do I stand for? And within that, you want to tell your story, and you want to tell it in the form of a masterclass or a webinar. Okay, but before you do that, you have to craft your brand story, and that's what your webinar is. You can't just put posts on social media and have a content plan and think that that's the way that you're going to get your brand style and story together. you doing, 15 to 60 second reels on TikTok, you doing carousels on Instagram, you putting content out daily that everybody doesn't always read or stop at the scroll of what you're doing daily, doesn't actually get your brand across. It gets your brand style across, but in terms of you getting your brand story across, does that make any sense? That's really what you want to do in a webinar. So once you've crafted your brand story, your style, your USP, you're going to basically put it everywhere that your audience would see it. So a webinar is something that you should have it memorized. Your whole team, any supplier that works for you should have it memorized. They should understand what the story is, because your story ultimately is an explanation of why they should take your offer and why they should buy your services. Okay, so whether you want to use it in the most basic things like an email signature, even if you want to put it in the wall, if you've got a bricks and mortar business or you meet people physically, does that make any sense? No matter where you want to put it, on social media, on a YouTube, on a podcast, it is instinctively, a webinar is a great way to be able to explain yourself and put it everywhere. Okay, and when you're crafting your brand story and you're crafting and you're thinking about your USP and you're thinking about, okay, what is my webinar going to be about? It has to be about your story, and it has to be about what you can change in your audience's life. So what you need to think about in terms of the structure of even just naming and putting together your webinar is you really need to think about, okay, what is the problem that I solve? And this is where you need to take a real deep dive, ladies, if you want me to be honest with you. Like, really think about what is the problem you solve. So, I'll use what we do at Women in Digital Business. At Women in Digital Business, we want to offer women all the services and all the support that they will need to be able to launch, grow and scale, depending on what stage you're at in that order of your business. And we're here within our community to give you mentoring, to give you business guidance. But essentially, what I do as a core part of this business is that I help women to build funnels. And the problem that the women that I help are having is that they're doing loads of different things. They're busy, they're burnt out, they're tired, they're following all the instructions of what they should be doing on social media. They're producing content, whether they're writing it, they're recording it, they're doing all the things that it feels like they're meant to be doing, and they just feel like they can't get ahead. That's their problem. They feel like in today's world, it's not just as simple anymore as just getting a logo, building a website, having that USP, going to networking meetings and just being able to go out there, network. And don't get me wrong, that still works. There's no doubt about that. That still works. But the world has changed. We network in a very, very different way to what we used to. And that's what I mean. Nothing's gone. It's just changed. So this notion that webinars don't work, email marketing doesn't work, it's just changed. So now when you're thinking about the problem that your audience has got, you really need to think about it from a more of the psychology point of view of where are they stuck? What is the problem? Okay. And like I said, now, before we might go to business networking luncheons, breakfast mornings. Does that make any sense? We might go to events that non-profits pull on. But now what we're noticing is that we're doing all of this stuff and it's not actually getting us any customers because the marketplace is really busy. Because of the recession, because of the economic climate, more and more people are now going into starting their own business, wanting to be a coach, wanting to be a consultant, wanting to be a freelancer, wanting to sell a digital product, wanting to get into trading, wanting to get into affiliate marketing, starting their own e-commerce store, starting their own beauty line, making their own product, their kitchen turning into a chemist and selling a product. Makes sense? There's so much more people out there because the internet has given us access to sell directly. Okay, it's taken out having to need someone to catapult you into a marketplace where you're going to have to need, a distribution house. You're going to have to need money for ads, for a newspaper, for magazines to get the word out there. The internet has made so many things possible. Okay, so because of that, you've really got to stand out in this marketplace because it's much busier than it's ever been before. So now, like I said, the logo's not working, just having a website, just going to network meetings. Now you've got to have a social media channel. Now you've got to have a content strategy. Now you have to understand what you are, your personal brand, what do you stand for. Now you've got to think about messaging. Okay, then you've got to think about how do I get people's interest, which is where the webinar comes in. How do I explain to people how I solve their problem? Okay, in that solving their problem, how do I then start having conversations and engaging with people, and what does the process look like from them being interested from the point of hearing my story and what I do in a webinar to actually signing up for one of my services? The game has changed. Whereas before there might have been 1 to 4 steps to you getting a customer, now there's multiple steps. And ultimately, that's what a funnel is. You are crafting out the steps in great detail of how you're going to find someone that doesn't know you, make them aware of you, right the way through purchasing from you. But there's a whole load of small steps. And the difference is all those small steps now happen digitally as opposed to happening in person. So the webinar is a pivotal point of this, because the webinar is what explains what you do. It's your brand story. So your brand story needs to be able to clearly articulate what the problem is for your end user. You need to be able to put yourself in the shoes, in the lens of who your customer is, and understand what the problem is, and be able to create a webinar that clearly articulates, I know how you feel. And for many of you as coaches, speakers and consultants, it will be because you've been there before, because that will be a large amount, and for many of you, be a part of your why story, not for everybody. And if you're not sure on how to articulate this, please make sure that you're watching out for our emails, because there's going to be more and more sessions where we're going to be having maybe some Q&As, and we can get to the bottom of finding out like what some of your problems are. So again, if you're watching this on a replay, please make sure that you join the community. Joining it means that you get access to a lot of our resources, and it also means that you're going to start getting the emails from us that update you about what we're doing. So you really want to understand what the problem is, and then you want to agitate it within your webinar. You want to rub salt in it. You know, if you was selling financial help to someone, you know, they've got a problem. If they don't fix the problem, they might lose their house. You know, they might be homeless. They might. You want to really agitate the problem and make it clear. I understand, and this is what's going to happen if you don't fix this problem. And that's where next is your middle. It's the middle part of the story in your webinar. That's where you want to bring in the solution, and the solution is your product or service. But you are not selling. You are explaining, and you are making sure that your messaging falls in line. Does that make any sense with the type of language and messaging that your end user understands? And then the last bit you want to do is talk about the positive result. You want to talk about what happens at the end of the webinar. Like once you've established, once they know you get them and you understand the problem and you're the right person, once they understand what your solution is and what they could be doing to overcome the problem, what you then want to talk about is what life looks like with that positive result. Okay, so it's all about the before and after. The after is now that you've gone, you've gone through the solution, which might be your program, what life looks like, but you are not selling. If you go back to storytelling of what I did last week, this is where you're going to bring your personality into it. This is where you're going to bring your authenticity into it. This is where you're going to bring your vulnerability into it. Okay, so webinars are still very key. At the foundation of everything that I do for myself and with clients, and I work with clients that turn over millions in the where I consult. These are medium-sized businesses that turn over tens and tens of millions. And even then, in that environment, they've got some type of content or format, whether you want to call it a webinar, whether you want to call it a masterclass, whether you want to call it a taster session, no matter what it is that you want to call it, that still sits in the middle of them being able to explain what they do to someone and what they do for someone, to someone, didn't mean to say that, what they do for someone, and the type of results that they can get without actually selling. And that's what the webinar does. The webinar sits in the middle of everything. So whether you've still got an ebook, which we'll be looking at next week, whether you've got your own community, you've got socials, you've got other forms of lead magnets, that's fine. But the webinar is the one that really is a great way, especially in this world where we consume so much video. It's really a powerful way is to craft a video that is that webinar, whether you do it live, whether it's pre-recorded, that can really explain to someone, I understand, I know who you are because I've been there, this is the problem, or I understand because I've worked with so many people that have been there. Even if you haven't gone through it, it's about really getting across like what is the problem for your audience, and then talking about what their solution looks like without telling them what you do. You can give them a framework of a solution, and then talking about how that solution will bring them to the place that they want to be. And essentially, that's what your masterclass and your webinar gives you the chance to do. And once you do that and you mix it into the art of storytelling, that is where the magic happens. So, ladies, that is the half an hour today. But what I want you to do, if any of you are in a position where you feel like you know what, I'm at a stage now where I really want to be able to develop my brand into a story. I really want to be able to develop a webinar and have it as a tool, as a lead magnet, because it's a great way for me to, you know, get out there who I am, what I do, what I stand for. Without it just being on a scroll, on a feed, on a social media channel, and expecting everybody to piece all those posts together, when actually really they might stop at one day, one the next week, or one the day after. Does that make sense? We create content like we think our audience is following every single post, and that's just not the reality. So a masterclass means that you can slip that masterclass in many different scenarios to make people aware of you, which is the first stage of the funnel or the user journey, if you know about it, and then you can create other customer touch points. But this is one of the best ways for you to be able to get your brand story. So, you know, if you want to delve into really understanding how to build out your brand story, how to build out an offer, putting lead magnet together, how to convert, which software to use, please do make sure that you sign up for the Funnel Queen Mastery Program. We're going to be going live, and the sessions are going to be starting, I think, around mid-May. But make sure you go onto that wait list. And again, the replays will be on YouTube. Okay, I'm just opening up the chat. Time to flip my presentations into paychecks. Make it rain. I love that. Last webinar flopped. I need this. And they're not easy. And that's what I mean. If you really want to be able to craft how to put together a webinar that has got that hook, the story and the offer, and is going to really get people into understanding your offering and what you do and get them into your funnel so they buy from you from that webinar, make sure you put your name on the wait list. Okay? Really, really key. Right, my half an hour's up, ladies. Make sure that anybody that you know that would enjoy these weekly lunch and learns, half an hour of nuggets that we try to give out, make sure that you send the link to them. Literally, you can just send the login URL where they can create an account. And again, for those of you that are watching it on replay that might not have access into our community, get used to coming in here. It literally is as simple as just logging in, and once you come in, you just go to join class and you can come into any of the masterclasses, because from next month we are going to be ramping up these masterclasses. It's my aim to help as many women as I can globally, and specifically Black women, because there's a lot of things that when you don't know, you don't know. And there's many services, coaches, communities out there where the aim of them is to really serve themselves more. It feels like, you know, I've gone through it, and it's the reason why I started Women in Digital Business, where I've paid for that high ticket coaching program, and all it is a framework of how somebody else made it, and that's not how it works in the real world. You know, there's a lot more thought that goes into it, and you need to craft out a funnel and a formula for yourself. So, lady, make sure you check the chat. Before I go, team, if you can just drop in the YouTube channels at the top of the chat, ladies, just scroll to the top. If you could just drop in a link to the VSL page, and make sure, there we go, brilliant. Thanks, Princess. So there's a link in the chat, ladies. Make sure you check it out, because in there is actually a masterclass that even gives you an example of how to deliver it. And it tells you as well, like, how a funnel did change my life, and how putting a strategic plan together will change yours as well. And if it's something that you're in the right place and you're ready for, make sure you put your name on the wait list, because we're about to actually have a live webinar where we'll be able to answer everyone's questions about joining the program, which is going to kick off literally at some point in May. We need to confirm a date. If you're ready to take your business to that next level and get it to where it needs to be before the end of 2025, make sure you click on the link that's in the chat, and make sure after you've watched the video you join the wait list. Right, ladies, as usual, I've gone over by a few minutes. I just can't help myself. It was a pleasure to see you all. Make sure you get the link in the chat, and I will see you next week, Tuesday at midday, for the next Lunch and Learn, which is going to be all about ebooks. Take care, ladies. Bye.